Hey everyone, welcome back. So this past week, I got to take an early look at Witchfire, the upcoming rogue-lite dark fantasy first-person shooter. I played the game for a few days now and have a pretty clear picture of what we're getting. In fact, I have more or less beat the game, having defeated the current final boss. Important note though is that Witchfire is launching into early access. So this is not the full and final version of the game in terms of content, in terms of polish, and even in terms of features. There is more planned to come down the road. But the core foundation of the game is here, and overall, I have to say, I am pretty impressed with Witchfire. I'm blown away, actually, by just how good the gameplay is. It feels like a AAA quality feeling shooter from a relatively medium to small size developer. I also really like the visuals, the world design, the setting, and audio. The core loop of just playing this game, sitting down, and spending time with Witchfire, it is fantastic in my opinion. However, with being an early access release, it is the case that yeah, the game is incomplete. As a result, right now, it does feel a bit content light in terms of the variety and the number of things there are to see and do. Also, there were quite a few bugs. Now, the developer has said they are well aware of these, they are working on them, it is a top priority. However, there were still enough bugs present this week when I was playing that I would be surprised if they were all gone come next week. If it happens, great, but it would be a pretty big surprise. Overall, though, I think Witchfire is loads of fun. It feels really great to play, so I hope they can expand upon it, polish it up, get rid of those bugs, and through the course of early access, just make it feel like a fully finished product, because there is something really great here at a foundation. So let's go ahead and talk about the game. The video here is going to be broken up into two parts. Part number one is just going to be an overview of Witchfire, like what is it, the content, the features, the mechanics, the gameplay loop. What do you do in this game? That's what I'll be talking about. And then the second part at the end will be like my early review. But, you know, it's a preview of an early access, so you have to understand what it is. It's just going to be my thoughts on how the game is right now as I played it, with the understanding that, yes, it's going to be getting updates, but how is the game at this very moment? If you were to start playing it this week, what should you expect from Witchfire? That's the point of that. Okay, so let's start off with the overview. What is Witchfire? Well, as mentioned, this is a roguelite dark fantasy first-person shooter. Here's what that means in terms of what a play session looks like. The basic goal is to load into a mission, do as much as possible, and survive before you have to retreat. So you go in, you fight enemies, you collect their Witchfire, think souls. This is what you basically work towards leveling up and making yourself more powerful. You navigate through these areas, going through dangerous obstacles, taking on mini bosses, all sorts of stuff, while also searching for valuable items. And then you try to escape through a portal without dying, because if you die, you drop everything, although you can return in an attempt to retrieve your Witchfire. Again, think souls. Hey man, the souls, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? It's a really good mechanic for this style of games. Now, if you do happen to escape through a portal, you're going to return to what's known as your base of operations. There, you will spend your Witchfire to level up, increasing stats, giving you various passive buffs for a variety of things. This is also where you do research. Basically, this is how gear progression and unlocking works. It's how you unlock your new weapons, spells, and items, and then equip anything new that you got that you want to use, maybe craft some health potions. Once done all of that, head back through the portal and start another run. Do the run, collect as much Witchfire and loot as possible, retreat back to base, use that stuff to power up, go back out on another run, rinse and repeat. That is the gameplay loop of Witchfire. All of this set on these maps or missions or levels, whatever exact wording we want to use. The topography, the environment of these places are static. However, everything within it is sort of randomly placed in each of the various areas, different assortments of enemies and events for you to take on. So currently, right now in the early access build of the game, there are 2 levels or missions, whatever. They're out of a total 6 placeholder that they have. There are 2 of them available right now. There's the Scarlet Coast and the Iron Gate Castle. So Scarlet Coast is where you begin. This level is made up of a ton of beachfront, a fishing village, mountain passes, and an old quarry, and all sorts of connecting pieces in between. When you load in for the very first time, you start out at a portal on one of the beaches. Your goal then is to just move through the map, fighting enemies, collecting items and loot, while trying to survive. Survival isn't going to be easy to start, but making that all the more better is that combat is very, very good in my opinion. The gunplay feels, sounds, and animations are top notch. Like I said, AAA level quality. This was one of the things I was most impressed with. It just feels great to move around and to shoot things. And what sort of things will you see? What sort of things will you be shooting? Well, there's quite a variety of enemies, points of interest, and events that you come across on a mission. Let's start with the enemies. There are enemy spawn locations called danger zones. These come in 3 tiers, basically easy, medium, and hard. The higher the tier, the harder and the more number of enemies you'll encounter. So the game has a pretty wide assortment of enemy types, from like your basic melee characters to bowmen, riflemen, assassins, swordsmen. There's a variety of different types of knights with shields and different swords and melee weapons they'll throw at you and teleport and do all sorts of crazy stuff. There are enemies that explode, there are gunners, there are grenadiers, there are massive shield guys, there are mini bosses, there are special event bosses, there are wandering bosses. The list goes on and on, with more and more enemy types being added to the mix as you progress through the game. Basically, as you level up, the game starts throwing more enemies at you. You think like, oh, I'm leveling up, I'm getting more powerful, it's gonna make everything easier. No, things actually get harder as you level up in a lot of ways, because of the fact you're faced with more and more difficult enemies and elite and powered up versions of those enemies and more variety of enemies. I mean, things do relatively get easier because your capabilities get better. Like, you'll get more health, you get more potion charges, your potions will heal more, you'll dash further, your spells will recharge faster. I'm gonna dive into all the specifics of this stuff, but leveling up both like makes it easier but also harder at the same time, because they start throwing more crazy stuff at you. It's a pretty cool way that they do it. Also, all these enemies I think are phenomenally designed. They've got really interesting appearances and abilities that require very specific tactics. The way you have to approach and avoid damage from a rifleman and a bowman, for example, are both different. Yeah, they're both range characters, but the timing of their attacks, how their projectiles work, how you have to dodge and position, just everything. And this applies for all enemy types. They each have their own unique challenge, and it's like a puzzle to solve with how you can engage them, but specifically how you're going to avoid damage, because you have to learn how to avoid damage. This game is quite the challenge. Witchfire can be absolutely brutal. I think especially in those first few hours, I was just constantly dying. Liam was playing as well. He was constantly dying. That was the thing that we both were saying to each other in those first few hours. We're like, man, this game is tough. No difficulty setting. It'll just kick your butt for quite a while. After a few days though, I've gotten a much better grasp on things, and I'm much more confidently able to just walk into a group of enemies, because now I've learned basically how they move, how they attack, the timings of everything. But early on, you will die very quickly. For that reason, it feels like a very tough game, but it also feels fair because, like I said, after some time under my belt, I have learned how these enemies work, and it's solving a puzzle is the way that I would describe it. Now, beyond shooting, the game has a few other tools for avoiding damage. In general, positioning, like I said, will play a big role. Pretty much everywhere on the map is going to have lots of spots for you to dodge line of sight. Where you are compared to where the enemies are is something you will definitely want to be paying attention to while you play. The game also has an out of vision warning indicator, so if there's an enemy attack coming at you from off screen that's about to strike, you get a little visual cue, and between that cue and the audio cues, you can even learn to dodge attacks without looking, because you will hear what attack is coming. With that, you can then know, should I be moving forward, backward, should I be dashing, depending on what sort of attack that's going to be. You've also got a sprint slide as well as a dash, like a sort of like a mini teleport, a sidestep if you will. Both of these very helpful. You will use them often, but you also have to be careful because the game has a stamina system. So stamina is consumed when sprinting, jumping, and dashing, but also when you take damage. So managing your stamina and not making sure you don't over jump or over dash or take too much damage is very, very important, because if you dash and that depletes your stamina, you dash again and then you're down to almost no stamina, and then you get hit and you're out of stamina and an enemy's on top of you, paying attention to your stamina will be very important. All of this combined with 3 weapon slots. There's also 2 spell slots and 3 gear piece slots that come with special, pretty powerful passive bonuses. Using all these tools against challenging groups of enemies just made for super rewarding and engaging combat. I just love every second of it. Sitting down and playing this game, it's a lot of fun. I really, really like it. Okay, so when you come to one of these spots on the map and it's at an enemy spawn location, you might see a few enemies there to start. There might be like, 2 to 5 or something. But once you actually step into the area, more enemies will then summon in. Clearing those zones will actually grant you this special selection of Arcana. And this is like part of the roguelite elements. These are essentially buffs that last for only that run, but they can be incredibly strong buffs, providing you like huge damage boost, reduction in spell spell time, extra special effects from elemental things, big bonus things like 30% more HP, reduced stamina recharge time. Like, these are really great strong effects where it's the roguelite thing where you're on a run and the risk reward is you can keep going on that run and get more powerful through pumping up these arcanas that you get by clearing these groups of enemies, or you can just retreat with the Witchfire that you have and the items that you have and use that to go do some more account progression back at base. The choice is up to you. That's how the roguelite stuff comes into play here. It's not just groups of enemies though. Well, no, it's not just groups of enemies. Tons of different sort of events. There's the soul trap event. You start this, it summons up enemies. You have to kill them, but avoid their souls that move slowly towards the trap. If you get hit with it, I don't know, I think it does explosive damage. I just know I died a lot whenever I tried to do the soul trap event. There are also events that are like complete the ritual. This will summon in a mini boss for you to duel. These were very hard in my experience. There's a wide assortment of cursed chests where you go up to the chest, you interact with them. There'll be like a seal on it. You rip off the seal and it starts one of an assortment of different types of events. These can be things like just try to survive. They're going to summon in a ton of difficult enemies. If you survive until the chest unlocks, you get to get what's inside. There's also ones where they'll have a set number of enemies and you have to kill all of them. There are cursed chests where they ask you to not leave the bubble and survive. And then there are also these cursed chests that are protected by a spell, and you've got like this ward floating above the chest, and you have to shoot the matching mini totems all around it, matching the colors to remove the curse. This thing like flips back and forth. That can actually be difficult to do. It is possible, but I've messed up many times. There are also events like follow the wandering soul. So there'll be like this little red wisp that floats in the sky. You follow it, you survive the enemies that it spawns in along the way, you get some loot at the end. And I should mention, all of these events reward you with loot at the end. They can be things like things that work towards your account progression, like Witchfire gems essentially, gold, which is used to speed up the part of the game's progression for unlocking things. It can be stuff for the run, so additional ammo, special demonic ammo, which is like for a super powerful weapon that you have. Just you like to do these events because they give you stuff that's very useful. In addition to the areas with groups of enemies, in addition to all of those events, there are also these hexed areas. There'll just be difficult obstacles there, like poison gas might cover an area, or there might be these little like witch creatures. They're like thorny, greeny witch creatures that make these weird noises, and if you get too close, they explode, and usually they are close enough to each other that they cause a chain reaction and you pretty much die. Also, tons of other events and stuff can happen. Sometimes you'll occasionally see some red ghost footprints, and if you follow those footprints, it is going to lead you to nearby artifacts. These are valuable because they turn into currency to speed up your progression. There's also the warden. This thing flies around with carrying this lantern, making these creepy noises, spinning around in circles. If it spots you, it calls in reinforcements, but if you kill it before it calls in reinforcements, you get yourself a special key to unlock one of those valuable chests on the map. There's also these guardians that will float in the air. It'll shoot you if you get too close, destroy these little totems of power nearby. It dispels the guardian, gives you some rewards, and lets you bypass the area. And roaming bosses as well. We've seen a variety of these. These were ridiculous and very cool, but also very difficult. Tons of collectibles for you to pick up on the map as well. The old supply chests, the ones that you need the key to open, you will find the key off of enemies, but specifically the warden always drops the key if you kill it before it vanishes. Witchfire crystals, so beyond the Witchfire that you get from killing enemies, these crystals can be consumed for additional bonus Witchfire. Angelica is the special herb that is used for potion crafting, so you'll want to pick that up whenever you see one. Also, there are mushrooms. There's a wide assortment of these. I feel like a lot of them are a gamble. Sometimes they heal you, sometimes they do damage, except for the tall, skinny ones. Those ones appear to always heal you. And then finally, the artifacts, like the ones that the ghost footprints will lead you to. You can also just find these in the world. They make a special noise as you get close to them. Collect those artifacts. Those will turn into gold. The gold is used towards your account progression, unlocking stuff. Periodically, while you're doing all this stuff, you're on a run, you've got all these different things to engage with and go towards whatever. Periodically, a calamity event will begin. When this happens, you will see a timer begin ticking around your mini-map, going clockwise slowly. This is the countdown to the start of the calamity event. Now, you're going to see an icon on your mini-map pointing you in the general direction of the source of this calamity, but on top of that, you can see it in the game as well, because if you look up in that direction, you are going to notice a swirling red twister. That is the calamity tornado or whatever. You have two choices at that point. You can head to that twister, kill the skulls that are floating around it, or once the countdown timer ends, the calamity event officially begins. Typically, this is some sort of a large wave of enemies for you to defeat. It's going to mix up the types of enemies, how many of them there are, but basically it's like enemies are coming, try to survive. These can be very hard. Sometimes they're even like summoning in just a huge number of elite enemies, and you're not going to be able to defeat them before the sanity meter drops to 0, and when it does, you are kaput. So normally what I will do is I will run towards the twister, shoot the skulls to stop the calamity. Doing this at that point also gives you 2 options. You can either let it just dissipate, in which it turns into some more witchfire, which again is used towards your leveling up, or the other option is to open it up and turn it into a portal, which brings us to the portals. This is how you end a run. So you have the calamity that you can turn into a portal, but also there is the portal that you come in through. When you first start a run, you are at a portal on the map. That portal despawns after 5 minutes. So maybe early on, or at least when I started playing, I would go in and just use that starting portal. I would start there, venture out just a little bit, try to collect as much as I could, and then quickly run back to the starting portal before it despawned in 5 minutes. However, as you play more and you get more comfortable, and especially nowadays, I don't even bother with the starting portal because you have the calamity that you can turn into a portal, but also on the map you will see 2 types of portals. There are green and yellow portals. Like everything else, while the landscape is static, all of the positioning of the events, of the enemy spawn locations, and yes, of these portals will be randomly placed. It's not completely random because there are like set locations where the portals can be, but you're not always guaranteed to get a portal in those locations. It will alternate which spawns are where, essentially, is how to describe it. So the green portals will open up very quickly. I think it's like 5 seconds. The yellow portals take about just 25 or 30 seconds or something. And also portals will not open if enemies are nearby. So there you go. You go through all this, you do all this stuff, you go back and forth between doing a mission and your base, powering yourself up via leveling or unlocking new weapons, spells, and items. And then as you level, like I said, things get progressively more difficult. New enemy types, more enemies, more events, elite variants of monsters, like super elite variants of monsters. Mini bosses start showing up. As we kept on playing day after day, we kept seeing more and more stuff. Really quite interesting, quite a lot of variety here. So the ultimate goal though, why are you doing all this stuff besides just playing it and because it's fun to play it? Well, your first obstacle is to take on the boss in the Scarlet Coast. I don't want to spoil it to you. I might show like a quick clip here, but it's a fun boss fight. I really liked it. For a first boss, I thought this was pretty interesting. It wasn't especially difficult once you got strong enough and I leveled up my weapons, but it was still an interesting encounter. And the setting of the boss fight is probably what sold it to me the most. Just a cool, I don't know, so much about this game's like environment, atmosphere, and things within it. Really like. So you fight the boss, you defeat the boss in the first area, you then get a special item and unlock access to the second level map, zone, whatever. This one, Iron Gate Castle. It is a big castle, which you will spawn just outside of it on the hills. You've got a little pasture, a little mountainside to your left, and then there's a raised drawbridge in the middle, a ravine with a closed backdoor entrance to the north, and to like the southeast is a locked gate. You have to try to find your way into the castle. All of those things are locked up when you start. Now, as you approach, there's going to be the variety of enemies and events, all the stuff we described in the first zone. There's things here. There's also getting introduced to new things. Go through the events, collect Witchfire, do that stuff, fight enemies, survive. You get the picture. The only way that we've actually found to enter the castle so far was in that locked gate to the south. Basically, you enter the courtyard. The gate behind you then closes shut, and you have to survive these waves of enemies. You clear that, and then you take that special item that you got from the boss in the first zone. You toss it in this little coin pouch on this corpse on this cart, and then the locked gate opens, and you can finally enter the castle. Now, once inside the castle, several large areas, cool location, just like the first setting. This is a really cool location. I can't wait to see the other 4 zones that they have already planned, and hopefully more beyond. But this, I want to see all 6 starter because these first 2 are just killer. I love these play spaces, really. And there's a big boss in the upper right hand corner in the church here, and you fight that boss, and that's basically it. So you go through, you level up, you progress your gear, you get really strong, you take on the castle boss, and in the future, defeating that boss will unlock access to that 3rd zone. But as of right now, that is the end of the early access build from what I saw and from what I've been told. I did confirm this with the developer as well. As I mentioned, there's going to be 6 zones in total. We've got those first 2. There are 4 the placeholder zones are already in the game. You can like see where they're going to be basically. These appear to be a small medieval town, marshlands area, a monastery, and then Witch Mountain, which at this point I'm assuming is the final boss based on like the lore and the narrative of the game. It's all about you taking on the witch. So Witch Mountain seems like that's going to be the place. Now let's talk about the base of operations and like the progression and stuff, because this is also another big part of the game. This is called the Shrouded Hermitorium. This is the area that you keep going to in between missions, and like I said, this is where account progression happens. Let's go through the areas. First is the apothecary. Super simple. You craft potions. All it is you take the Angelica herb that you found, you click craft, and you get potions spit out. That is the extent of it. There's nothing else. I'm assuming more will come with the apothecary down the road, maybe, but right now it's as basic as that. Then there is the Ascension Shrine. So this is where you go to level up, spending that Witchfire found during runs to increase your level, but specifically you're picking stats. Those are Vitality is used to increase your max HP. Healing will increase the healing amount as well as the number of charges of potions you can carry. You start with one. I don't know how it goes max. I think it's like 4 or 5 maybe from what we saw, but I'm unsure. There's also the Endurance stat, which will increase your base max stamina, its regeneration speed, as well as the length of your dash, which is pretty huge. Witchery increases your spell recharge speed. This goes up to eventually 200% faster recharging. That is huge. Met and Oya. This increases the bonus percent of Witchfire that you get. So basically more Witchfire equals more experience. And then finally Luck. This increases the quality and quantity of items found, but also reduces the calamity frequency. That seems pretty huge. After that, there is the Workshop Mirror. This is how the item progression comes into play. So instead of finding items while you play, you're not finding weapons and spells. No, you unlock them via research. This actually gives a lot of flexibility in terms of the order in which you get things. There are some like level caps, like you can't start research on a certain thing until you reach level 3 or 5, but after just the first couple of hours, I pretty much unlocked most of things, and it was really just I was getting to pick what order in which I was unlocking stuff. So what sort of stuff can you research? What sort of stuff can you unlock? Well, weapons. There are close, medium, and long-range weapons, as well as the demonic weapon. Spells, they come in 2 varieties: light, which are just more spammable, and heavy, which are heavier hitting but have a longer cooldown. Magical items, and these slots are for the relic, fetish, and ring. These give you nice passive bonuses. Then you can also research the arcana. These are the passive bonuses you get during runs after defeating an enemy zone. You can research more options from this basically that you can get during runs. You can get upgrade materials. This is how you power up your weapons, spells, and items from levels 1 to 2 to 3. Those upgrades not just making them more powerful stats, but also giving them new abilities. You can research Ascension incantations, which are used to increase a stat. However, that was broken during the playtest from what we saw. It just wasn't working. And there's also the Shadow Cube, which rewards gold, which is used to boost research speed. So basically, you click on something you want to research, a timer starts, and then after a certain amount of time, that item becomes available. You go pick it up. And normally what I would be doing is I would be going, once I got really comfortable with the game, I would research stuff. You can research 2 items at a time, and then I'd go out, I'd do a run, and then as soon as that research was done, I would head back to base, turn in my Witchfire, level up, finish that research, use those items if I wanted them, start 2 more research items, and then head back out on another mission. And that's basically how it worked. How do you put this gear on? Well, it is in the gun room. This is where you have to go to swap equipment. You've got 3 weapon slots, the 2 spell slots, and then a slot for relic, fetish, and ring. In terms of the quantity of things for weapons, there are 6 in total, 2 of them for each range, close, medium, and long range, and then that 1 demonic weapon, the crossbow. For spells, there are 5 light spells and 5 heavy spells, and for items, there are 4 of each, the relic, fetish, and the ring. All sorts of different potential really cool stuff here. Okay, so that is basically an overview of the general game. Now I want to move on to my review portion, my just like early impressions of this early access build as it's coming into early access. Here's what I think so far. For the good, like I said at the top, dude, the gameplay is phenomenal. It feels so good. I am super impressed. I love every time I sit down and play this, even with any like concerns I have or whatever, or even beyond the fact that I've pretty much played through the content for the most part. Yeah, there's more progression for me to do. I can level up more things a little bit. I can increase my character level, but I've played through both the levels pretty extensively. I've beat both the bosses. I've taken on everything there is to take on that I've seen so far. Even that said, dude, I just want to sit down and play the game because it feels so damn good. They nailed the gameplay, the movement, the gunplay, the sounds and animations, casting spells, everything feels absolutely phenomenal. Also, enemies, super cool, well designed, love the mechanics as well. All the gunplay combined with the enemy variety and what they do just makes for an overall fun play experience for that reason. The world and visuals, this setting, the appearance of the environment, like everything up, man, they killed this as well too, which isn't surprising because this is the same studio that did Vanishing of Ethan Carter, and that one is partially known for just the striking, really awesome visuals of the game's world. So they nailed that here as well. Super cool play space to move around and lots of, it's a feast for the eyes is something I would say. And I also really actually like the progression system, the fact that they let you kind of pick and choose how you unlock things. Like once I had weapons that I was happy with, I would just then keep unlocking new items, you know, the rings and the fetish and stuff like that, or keep unlocking new spells to see what else I could have. Instead of it being random drops, it's just like pick what you want to get next, and I really like that. The final for the good, it's just super fun. Like really, I really like playing this game. Now for the bad, well, a lot of it does just lean into the fact that they are launching an unfinished early access game. Right now, not enough content, I would say. That's my number one concern, with only 2 of the 6 playable levels available at the moment. And I spoke to the developer, they confirmed that defeating the castle boss, the 2nd level boss, that is the major goal for the early access launch. Once you do that, you can keep playing because it's fun, but otherwise, there's really not much else for you to move towards. You can't unlock any of the other levels. There is more than enough progression, like I said, you know, your character levels, leveling up your weapon tiers from 1, 2, and 3, and the same thing applies for your spells and items, but doing all of that on 2 missions has already started to wear its welcome in what I've been playing over the past few days. So I can't wait till they add more, because that's what I want, more playground to play in, basically. And the bugs, well, you know, they warned us there would be bugs. They're aware that they are bugs, but boy, were there a lot of bugs. That said, they're aware. They've said that this is a priority, is fixing these bugs. But like I said, these were all here the week prior to launch. So I'm expecting some of them will be there at the early access launch. So if you play in an early access, just expect bugs, but also know they're aware. They said they're aware, they're working on it, so whatever. And I guess to wrap up my thoughts on my biggest concerns, what I'm worried about right now is that we have an otherwise phenomenal game, in my opinion. Like I said, the gameplay, the world, the setting, the combat, the enemies, the fighting, the variety of things, the events, the atmosphere, they knocked it out of the park with so much of this game. But I feel like we might have an otherwise great game coming out too early, even too early for early access, that really might hurt the people's first impressions of the game, because it feels so content light and has had so many serious bugs. I'm really worried this is going to harm the initial reception. Like, yeah, whatever, realities of game development, the expenses, the cost, but boy, give it another year, launch with all 6 missions at least, and then come out, and people will probably be blown away, because the core game is just amazing. So sometimes developers can turn it around, and I think because the game is so good at its core, that it might stand a better chance. That goes through the early access period, fixes all the issues, adds a lot more content, and then once it releases into 1.0, we get a great reception wholly wide. Only time will tell with Witchfire, and I am hoping for the best, because so much about this game, gameplay, design, world, visuals, sound, I love it. Very good. Now, the developer did tell me they are expecting to release a rough content roadmap somewhere around a couple weeks after the early access release. One other thing that I know that might actually be like almost a saving grace for how this game is received, it's only coming to the Epic Store for early access. And while a lot of people just don't want to use and don't play games in the Epic Store and wait for Steam, I think that could actually help the fact that they're launching content light and probably a little buggy, because a lot of people probably won't play the Epic version. And so if they can survive and not shut down during this early access period, if they have the funding that they need to continue development and move into 1.0 and then get the Steam release, I feel like a vast majority of the people who will eventually play Witchfire probably won't be playing until the Steam version comes out. That's just how it seems to be anyways. So that could actually be a saving grace for them feeling content light and bug heavy for this early access launch. I can't say it enough, dude. The core of the game, it's so good. Like, even though I feel like I've pretty much seen everything, I still want to play because it feels that good to play. So there's a lot going for Witchfire. I'm hoping for the best, and while I do want to see a lot more of Witchfire, I do like the Witchfire that I've seen. There you go. That's the video. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one.